Welcome to another episode of the Straight Up Chicago Investor Podcast. I'm Tom Shellcross, licensed agent with Second City Real Estate. With me, as always, is Mark Ainley, founder and owner of GC Realty. Mark, are you excited over there?
I'm excited because BiggerPockets is such a big part of my real estate career. Even though I didn't figure it out or find it till about 10 years into my career, it's just been such a big part that I'm so passionate about it. And you know, to be episode 85 where we had David Green on here, and episode 166 where we had Jay Scott, and today's guest coming on here in a second. I'm just excited whenever we get to get around these people and be able to share these experiences and these interviews with our listeners, all you guys.
Absolutely. I can absolutely remember just being obsessed with the content, right? Just getting through like so many of those in a week when you first find it, like, oh my God, I did not know that this existed. And so much good stuff and so much to share. And, you know, so let's go ahead and get started here. Let's give us the housing provider tip of the week so we can get to our guest. So
our housing provider tip of the week is perseverance. You know, I am that not give up spirit. Our guest today has it, and that's what kind of made me bring it up. But whether it's perseverance for trying to get a job, getting a tenant, getting a work order done, getting a wife, maybe whatever it might be, getting a deal to the closing table, those having perseverance and being able to keep pushing through any of your obstacles in your way or your roadblocks or figuring out ways around them is what's going to make you successful in life. So you can take that personally or professionally. Having perseverance is going to take you to another level in life that you're not even sure you're aware you can be at yet. So
I like it. What is it? The only guarantee to failing is to stop trying.
Yes. Love it.
There you go. All right. So let's jump in. Heavy hitter alert. Today's guest, the CEO of BiggerPockets, the world's largest online network of real estate investors. It has played a huge role in increasing the odds of success for thousands of investors. He's also the co-host of the BiggerPockets Money Show with Mindy Jensen. He's the author of Set for Life. He's known for his data-driven and practical approach. Without further ado, I'd like to welcome Scott Trench to the show. Scott, absolutely a pleasure to have you on the show. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thank you guys so much for having me. Really excited to talk about my favorite subject.
We are excited to have you. So most of our listeners know who you are. They know the backstory. It's well documented out there on multiple podcasts and interviews. But I want to take it to a point where, you know, you were looking for financial freedom. I know you found Mr. Money Mustache. You stumble across BiggerPockets. You know, and you're working at Dish Network at the time. And it sounds like you're at a networking event and you run into Josh Dorkin. And that's where the original BP connection happens. Talk to us a little about the first time you guys met. And it sounds like it was it took you a couple asks to try to get involved there. It wasn't just yep, come on board. So tell our listeners a little of the oral history there, how that all came together.
Yeah, well, the BiggerPockets podcast encourages you to meet local real estate investors, which as it should. That's a really powerful way to network and learn your local market. So I joined a mastermind group of local real estate investors, and one of them invited me I invited each one of them actually in turn out to lunch. One of them told me, come by my co-working space where my office is headquartered, and then we'll go to lunch from there. And at that co-working space is where I saw the BiggerPockets logo and realized that must be Josh Dorkin recording the podcast from that room over there. And so I banged on the door, and I think he was in the middle of something. And so he told me to go away a few times. Or told me to go away. And so I did, you know, but I was still starstruck. And then I followed up a few more times. And eventually I think he was thinking about expanding the operation at BiggerPockets at the time. And so I imagine that while I was slightly annoying for a few calls, the fact that I was already a listener, already familiar with the business, you know, cheap, all those kinds of things made me a attractive person for him to talk to in the end. So I probably overplay how annoyed he was those first few times, and you know, probably don't give him enough credit of like, yeah, he was probably happy that someone like me was beating down his door because he needed somebody like me at that time.
Yeah. So that's like 2014 timeframe, correct?
That's right. That's June, July, somewhere in there.
So, and Mark, I know your episode with BiggerPockets aired in 2014. So I'm just going to go ahead and add to the story that he was recording Mark's episode when you knocked on the door.
That's right. Yeah, that's probably how it went.
Scott, first podcast I ever recorded was with BiggerPockets. And it was only because I had the persistence to bother Brandon Turner. Not so much in a way like put me on your podcast, but just kind of drill him with questions. And he's like, hey, why don't you come on? You'd be interested. So that's how I ended up on there. But
those early episodes, they still get really good downloads. So people go back and listen to all of the hundreds. I guess we have over 1,000 cumulative episodes across all the podcasts now, and people who are here have listened to all of them.
Yeah, it's huge for our SEO. I know that.
Awesome. So Scott, we get started at BiggerPockets. A lot of our listeners have probably found the site and call it the last 2 to 3 years, right? It's almost taken for granted. You can just go, you Google any question, you go on there and, BiggerPockets ends up being the answer. Like, oh, what is this? You find the forum and you start getting involved. But talk to us about those early days. What was it like in, call it the 2014 to up until 2020? Did you have the vision early on of it was going to get this big, and the books and the podcasts and all those things that came around? Like, talk to us just like if you could give the honest assessment of where you guys were at the time.
Yeah. So at the time, it was really a startup, right? We had a couple of revenue line items that were brand new. We made our money from ads. We had one book, the 2 books, I guess, the Flipping Houses and Estimated Rehab books by Jay Scott. We had and a brand new subscription product, the Pro membership. We also subsisted off of donations to a small degree, where some customers would actually donate to BiggerPockets, the for-profit business, because they were getting value. So it was kind of an all hands on deck. Everybody's figuring things out. I really embraced this line of self-education around the concept of growth hacking, which is finding creative ways to reach new audiences, deliver new products, experiment rapidly, do a lot of conversion testing, those types of things. And of course, we're all trying to think through what the latest challenges for real estate investors are, and come out with content that would help address those things or make people think or get them to talk about certain items with in real estate. As far as, did you ever think it was going to get this big? There was no doubt in my mind at any point that BiggerPockets had something special going on and was going to grow steadily for a long period of time. When I joined, I don't know how Josh felt or Brandon or some of the other folks, but to me it was obvious, because I was so far down drinking the Kool-Aid by the time I joined, and could so my whole approach to my career, my personal finances, my wealth had been shaped by what I'd heard on the podcast and read in the blogs and the other content produced by the company. So to me, it's I think a lot of folks probably go through something similar, where it's like, capitalism, that's actually accessible to me, is really kind of what we're providing to a certain extent. And immersion and down that rabbit hole, the ability to immerse yourself, is something that I think a lot of people enjoy about BiggerPockets. So there was no doubt that millions more people would go down that rabbit hole to some extent, and that uniquely among many providers, we provided a platform that wasn't about one individual's voice. It was about the collective wisdom of experts in the crowd.
What is it? Use the word Kool-Aid, often referred to as a cult following, but what is it about? So I was told about from my current business partner, Cliff, about BiggerPockets 2013. And ever since then, here I am 8 years later or 9 years later. And when I get the chance, when someone's like, I've never heard of BiggerPockets, that makes my day. I can't wait to share it with them. I can't wait to no one's ever oh my God, you got to see TikTok. This thing's no one ever, there's nothing out there like that. What is it that gives that cult feeling? Why do all these members and subscribers and people that pay to be out there? What is it about BiggerPockets that just makes people so excited?
I think that there's a lot of ways to put it. The cheesiest sounding one, but I'll say anyways, is probably, I think it's what a lot of people consider to be the American dream these days, is this ability to achieve financial freedom. And I think that when you have to, in order to understand the answer to your question, you have to think about the customer journey. What is a member of BiggerPockets going through? And this is a 2, 3, 4 year journey to buy the first property for many of these folks, and a 30-year investment journey that they're about to undertake. If they're going to get serious about real estate, right? You're owning real estate for the long term for most of our members. So what happens is there's this aha moment of, financial freedom, cash flow, ability to generate wealth passively. That's an option for me in a general sense. I definitely want to pursue that to some degree. I can do this with stocks. I can do it with real estate. I can do it with bonds. I can do it with small businesses. I can do it with all these different avenues. Real estate is really applicable to me because I'm a upper middle class wage earner. I can get mortgage debt. I have some time to devote to this, but not enough time, not so much time that I can run a full on side business, for example. But I can invest, the hundreds of hours of self-education that are necessary to get to the starting point and feel comfortable with real estate investing on my commute or in my spare time with this, and really treat it as a fairly serious hobby. I know some investors don't like that, but most investors do treat this as a part-time side business, not a full-time gig when they get started. So great. So now what we've done there is we've had two aha moments, or two inflection points. One is the discovery of financial freedom and the commitment to going down that path. And then the second is this immersion period, which I think almost every investor that's serious is going to go through before getting into real estate investing, or a huge percentage of them will. And that is often to the tune of several hundred hours of self-education, hundreds of podcasts, dozens of books, meeting with a dozen or two local investors, looking at countless properties and analyzing them. That 250 to 500 hour investment of time is how you increase your odds of success in this business. And then you actually buy the property and the work begins, right? You got to stabilize the thing. You got to put a tenant in place. You got to either self-manage, fix it up, or hire those things out, each of which is a skill set and involves a time commitment to some degree and or dollars. And then I'm going to sit for a year or two and continue learning and immersing myself, but not taking action, because in real estate, unlike other types of investments, there's a very simple phenomenon that happens for our investors, which is all of the liquidity that they were comfortable investing up to that point in their lives, perhaps, has gone into property number one. And a year or two has to pass before they can get the next set of liquidity accumulated from their personal lives and savings, right? And so the cycle repeats. And so what you have here is you have a really interesting market of folks who are truly moving towards financial independence and building wealth into the millions and millions of dollars with real estate over a 5, 7, 10-year period. But they're doing so with very irregular, large actions that occur at infrequent intervals, based on the timing of their personal lives, the cash, the liquidity accumulation, those types of things. And I think we serve that really well by offering you an ability to just immerse yourself for free or for very low cost in all the resources and tools that you could want during those immersion periods. And then, of course, we also have our subscription product for those folks who are actively taking those next steps in their business or scaling them, and then our marketplace business. But we'll get to that later.
Well, I think I'm going to ask you guys both this question, because when I do get, if you can't tell, I'm a big cheerleader of BP, totally. And when I get the chance to tell someone, like I said before, I get all giddy. And I usually explain it as three different things. I kind of have it narrowed down to BiggerPockets. Is people go to BiggerPockets for three reasons. One, to learn, all the due diligence, the hundreds of hours you're just talking about, calculators, figure out what the hell a pro forma is, all that stuff. Two, they go there to find resources, whether it be I need a property manager, I need a broker. Hey, even me, I go on there still. If we were backed up and we have a big snowfall, like I need a landscape guy in this part of town. Anyone got someone I could shovel today? And then within 10 minutes, I get two people. It's wonderful. So resources too. And then three is to give back. So I think there's a lot of people that go on there in this final segment that have been burned, have learned their lessons, have gone through their first, maybe they spent their first part of their career before they came upon BiggerPockets, getting burned and learning all the lessons the hard way. And those people are just as important to give back to all the lessons they learned the hard way. So that's kind of how I categorize it. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I think that's a great point you made on the last part there. The content, who's providing the content? It's the people who want to give back. And it's because of what you just said there. It's a culture that we've built at BiggerPockets of sharing all that stuff openly and honestly, the wins and the losses and the setbacks. And by sharing that, you're benefiting countless other people down the road who, in turn, when they become successful and build their businesses, want to give the same thing back to the next guy. And that creates a really positive feedback loop.
Yeah, I'll piggyback there as well. And Scott, you've touched on liquidity, in the American dream. And one of the things I think BiggerPockets does a very nice job of is when someone comes in there, big eye, bushy tail, and they're like, I'm going to do this, this, and this. And they're like, 4 people will get on there right away and be like, you need to save money up to set yourself up for success. Right. Like it's a very practical approach of people who've gone through it before, as opposed to go get them, kid. Like a lot of people, I don't call them dream crushing, but like I jokingly say that, where it's no, these are the things that need to happen, right? You need liquidity. You need either whether it be partner, whatever you do, like these are the logical steps. And the fact that it's very pragmatic and coming from a platform and not just some guy saying, yep, buy my next course and I'll show you, like that makes all the difference in the world, I feel. Yeah. There's a lot of answers on the platform where it might not be the thing the person wants to hear at the time, right? But it is the right answer.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of fundamentals, and the seasoned investors will tell you how they feel, even if it's not what you want to hear, like you said.
Yeah. So Scott, talk to us how you guys manage this growth, just from a business perspective, right? You guys have a lot going on. Talk to us about just getting the house in order, because from going from startup to where you are now, it's been huge growth, and there's probably been some stumbling along the way and just some growth pains. So talk to us about that, and then how you guys have overcome those.
Yeah, and I'll focus that answer in the last 4 years in particular, since I've become CEO. And I think the first part of that is to start with you start with understanding the customer journey. You start with, where are you trying to go? What's your vision? And how are you going to get there? What's your strategy for the business? And from there, layer in the structure of the organization that makes sense, including the senior leadership team, and the operational protocols. I understand that actually you guys use EOS in your business, Mark. And so understand, putting those things in place. And then it's about, execution. But I mean, there's a lot. So that's a very high level, broad answer. Maybe I can go into each one of those items in detail, and that would help answer the question. Or one layer down? Yeah,
let's do it. If you don't mind digging deeper, let's go. I think, because again, a lot of our people listening, they'd love to be behind the curtains on what's going on at BP.
Awesome. So again, starting with the customer journey and the vision here, what the customer wants, what the typical BiggerPockets member wants, is not to build a large real estate business. Rather, they want to achieve a modest to middle level of financial freedom, a few $1 million with to maybe $10,000 or $20,000 per month in passive cash flow. And they want to do that over 7 to 10 years for the most part, with that. That is also how the market's shaped up. 90% of single family rentals in this country are owned by investors with 10 or fewer properties, and 60% of single family rentals are owned by investors with just 1 or 2 properties outside their primary residence. So this is a market that is heavily fragmented and dominated by small mom and pop investors that are buying these properties 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 at a time over 2 decades, right? We can't change that market. We can help those investors get there faster and with better odds of success, but that's the reality of the market, and that's the customer segment that we serve at BiggerPockets. We also serve some of the folks, the 10% of the audience, who will go on to scale their businesses to a more meaningful degree and move past the small residential space as well. But that our core customer is really that person that's buying a handful of rental properties over a decade or two in pursuit of financial freedom. So our vision for this customer is to build a one-stop shop location where they can achieve that journey, where they can have the aha moment around financial freedom, immerse themselves and get comfortable with the steps of making that first purchase, transact on that first purchase, find their agent, find their lender, make comfortable assumptions around those around the deal, manage the property, either self-managing it or with a property manager that we might introduce them to. It just usually depends on their income level. Higher income earners like to hire out property management, and lower income earners like to do it themselves, which makes perfect sense. And then, same thing with other maintenance during that maintenance phase. Then purchasing the next property, and then it comes down to portfolio management and scaling toward financial freedom. At the end, we'd like to help some 10% of those audience members go on to become big-time syndicators and real estate investors that are building large portfolios, and the other 90% aspire to what I think is the ultimate goal in life, the title of limited partner, and passively invest in those funds. So that's what we're trying to get to. From a strategy component, we have to make money on the way to get there. So how do we make money? And what is our current approach? Well, we split our BiggerPockets product offering into 3 buckets. The content and community bucket, that provides the education. And we make money in this business by selling ads and then selling content, right? So if you listen to a podcast, we're making a few cents from the ads on that podcast every time someone listens. If you read a book, we make a few dollars. And then, of course, our conference, which we include in that community and content piece, is a profit driver for the business as well. So that helps in that immersion phase of the business. And that the job of the content community business is to help people feel comfortable with the next steps in their real estate investing journey for as long as that takes. You should be able to immerse yourself for hundreds of hours to solve any problem you want in the real estate space, from getting started, which is a good chunk of our content, to scaling or pushing through inflection points in your business. The next part of our business is our subscription product, our pro membership. The goal of that is to become a one-stop shop for the investor to find that first property. It takes serious actions to managing that property and maintaining and scaling their portfolio. So that has property management software included with it. It has leases and landlord forms. It has the ability to find off-market deals, and it has calculators to help analyze deals among other features. And then the last business, and the newest one for us, is the matchmaking business. This is where we matchmake our investors with agents, lenders, property managers, insurance brokers, and so on. Right now, that business is limited to just agents. Next year in 2023, we will do lenders, and we'll create a lending matchmaking experience. And then in 2024, we will introduce property management. And we go in that order specifically because we feel like that's the stages of the transaction that are most likely to help our customers, right? The agent is the focal point of that transaction. The lender is obviously critically important. Property management comes after that and is in the management phase of the transaction, so on and so forth. So we like this because this strategy allows us to monetize and make money in an effective way. I like my job as CEO. One of the jobs of a CEO is to build the business financially. And that allows us to say, okay, we're going to acquire our customers and engage those customers with free content that's very low cost. Then we have a subscription product where the customer pays us, right? And then we also have a marketplace business where the customer in the marketplace business, the person paying us, is the service professional, the agent, the lender, the property manager with that. So that kind of three-pronged approach to monetization we think is very powerful in our business. Okay, so now we've talked about vision and strategy. Let's talk about structure. Now we have to build the business around that. And this, I think, was the biggest learning point for me, was putting in place an overall business structure, transforming the business structure and the leadership team to reflect what I just described there. And so our business has general managers in each of those business lines. We have in our content community business, we have two. We have media, general manager of media, and general manager of our book publishing business. We have a general manager of our subscription business, a general manager of our marketplace business. And then we have the supporting functions of marketing, HR, technology split into product and tech and engineering, and then finance.
Do they all have their own level 10 meetings? Do all those different departments have all their different level 10 meetings and do you run that structure, the traction management structure, through the whole org?
Yes. So in terms of traction, I implemented EOS in late 2020. We run, I would say, a modified version of EOS. Our business is fairly complex and unique. There are not a lot of good comps for our business. So we feel that the EOS system is a little light on strategy and the work needed to crystallize what we need to do and get into those places. But we run a level 10 EOS with the leadership team, and then those departments run their own EOS meetings internally. We don't have separate ones for product and tech. Those operate as one division in the business.
Take one step back, though, for our listeners not familiar with traction. What is EOS? What is 10? Let's just give some definitions here.
Yeah. So when you want to run a business, you need some sort of standard operating procedures. Are you going to have a weekly meeting? Are you going to have board meetings? Are you going to have a monthly review? Are you going to track your stats? Again, weekly, monthly, what's the format going? So EOS is a operating system. It's literally called Entrepreneur Operating System, EOS, that I think was developed by Gino Wickman and is articulated in great detail in a book called Traction. That's really good for a lot of entrepreneurs. And I think it's a well-designed operating system or set of protocols to run your business instead of having to figure out, how do I do performance management? Oh, well, EOS has a protocol for performance management. It has a protocol for tracking. It has a protocol for people. It has a protocol for putting together the vision and a simple version of strategy called the VTO, which is a two-page business plan document. So it has a lot of powerful tools that if you're not using them, or if you're an entrepreneur that's been figuring this stuff out on your own, are going to be life-changing for you.
Yeah, it's great. Even for, usually anyone over half a million up to $1 million, you can start using this even with less people. And for us, it's all about breaking down the problems or roadblocks, which are problems, to be able to grow and kind of break through to the next level. So anyone out there listening, it's a great tool.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Scott, you've mentioned the customer journey several times, right? And we built a business around this. Do you have any insights to how many folks get on the site, they're asking questions and then never move forward, right? And then their account is just, non-existent, come, after 6 months of firing off a bunch of questions. Like, do you just, and I want, if you have the stats, I want to share them, because I want people who have gone through the process of purchasing and building, it's a remembrance that it's hard and a lot of people don't make it through.
Yeah, that's a great question. I don't have a great way to articulate the answer directly. Hey, we have 100,000 people visit our site and 60% of them we're never going to see again. I can tell you that there's a retention power curve that you can look at, which is the number of people who are active 12 months later tend to stay active after that. So a significant percentage, but that's less than 10% of the audience. So there is a big drop off where at least 90% of folks who sign up are not active on BiggerPockets a year later. That's very common across almost every social media platform. This concept of that active user power curve. I will say that when we look at active users on our platform, I bucket them into 3 categories. We have new people who are coming to the site for the first time ever in a period. Current people who were active in the prior month, for example, and then are active again the next month. And then resurrected users, which is a funny term that our analytics software uses. And depending on how you sequence the timing of these active users, for example, quarterly, monthly, weekly, the resurrected cohort is one of the largest cohorts in our audience. And that makes perfect sense in our business, right? Because the goal for many of those investors, these core customers, is not to immerse themselves year round in perpetuity in real estate investing. The goal is to have a couple of paid off properties or a stable portfolio, not have to think about it, and for it to dump money into your account while you travel to Barbados, right? And so and I just described that even in the acquisition phase, the accumulation phase, there are periods of significant activity in this investor journey and periods of lesser activity. So our business, again, is designed to embrace that dynamic with the customer and not force real estate on you forever. Now, a small handful of our members do want that. They tend to be the ones that I talk to on podcasts about real estate investing. So, but it's actually less common from the core customer perspective. And so we're totally fine with that dynamic. And we don't even call the users who do not come back to the site churned. We call them dormant at BiggerPockets, because we know that nobody wants to give up on real estate investing. It's just it's not for me now type discussion. So there's that period of dormancy, and we're there, and we'll be producing fresh content with really well-educated and sophisticated investors in real time forever, whenever they're ready to come back. Does that answer your question?
Oh yeah. That was good.
That was good. Well, Scott, you have, as I've been researching these last few days, I've learned a bunch about you. You love rugby and all that, but you have such an impressive story. Like, you are in your young 30s in a role that is typical for someone in their mid 50s. You have accomplished more than most people will ever accomplish in their entire life. That sets you up to be like a role model. I always think of Sean McVay coaching at like 30 for the Rams. Like, you are right up there with him in what you're doing, what you've accomplished. Maybe you don't like the Rams or McVay, but I do think he's impressive too, what he's been able to do in his young age. But you had to grow up fast. You had to grow up fast in your professional side. Like, what were some of the big hurdles you had to overcome personally that can be good insight for other people that are trying to grow their professional career faster?
Well, thank you for the nice words. I have never compared myself to Sean McVay. I don't think I should. I think that I would love to win a Super Bowl one day, but that'll require a major career change at this point. But no, I appreciate that. I think when I took over for Josh as president in 2018, I got a pretty good hands-on education, I guess late 2017, early 2018, in a lot of business basics and first-time leadership and those types of things. But I would say that my trajectory began to accelerate as a CEO when we recapitalized and brought on our partners in McCarthy Capital, our private equity partners. And as part of that, we got a chairman. His name is Mike Zawalski. He's the chairman of the board at BiggerPockets. And this is an individual who has been a CEO or president for 30 years across 15 different engagements, each with a successful outcome for his shareholders. And so I have this incredible mentor, coach, boss that I meet with once a week. And so attending Mike Zawalski University for the last 4 years has been, I think, my cheat code to getting better. What's my, everyone has their superpower. Mine is that I'm coachable. I respond very well to those types of feedback, or at least I think that I respond very well. I've been told that by various coaches. And so I have not always liked or agreed with necessarily some of the feedback that I've gotten from my boss, but it has made me immeasurably better at my job. I feel like I can start and frame answers to questions you might have about the business instantaneously, because I've been coached on how to think about those types of things. Start with customer journey and problem, move on to where your business is going. What's it look like in 3 to 5 years? What's the strategy to get there? What are the specific actions you're going to take? When are you going to get them done by? How much is it going to cost? What's the revenue output? How can you balance those things, maintain operating margin in the business? These are all frameworks that I can now instinctively, or maybe not instinctively, reflexively call up when I'm faced with a decision-making point. And it's because of that coaching and training for the last 4 years. So I think that's the big advantage. And that's an advantage that I have because I'm not some genius founder that came up with a brilliant idea and started a business from scratch. It's because I work at a private equity backed business with stakeholders that have certain expectations from me. And I have a boss that is coaching me on these points and has power over in the relationship dynamic to a certain degree. And I think that's been my biggest advantage is that set of circumstances has required me and enabled me to master, or not master, but become a journeyman in developing the skill set of the CEO skill set. How's that?
No, that was good. That was good. You thought you were planned for that question, but you didn't. So again, everyone listening, we do not give all the questions out. So nice job. I'm going to ask one more question on that. So as a CEO, you get beat up, man. Like there's days you just go home and you're like, damn, is this even the right fit for me? I mean, as a business owner, we all have those days. Like, am I even doing the right thing in life? Like, what gets you up the next morning? What motivates you right now in this stage of your career to get up and run with it again?
Well, it's easy at BiggerPockets because we get stories from members over and over and over again, almost every day, about how their lives are changing and how they're building wealth and how they feel like they're empowered to make good decisions because of the work that we're doing. So we're helping enable financial freedom, and that is empowering people to live life with personal and financial flexibility and go and pursue big dreams or live happier lives or do cool things for their community. So we want to create 1 million millionaires here at BiggerPockets. We think that is $1 trillion wealth goal, and that's better than creating 1 trillionaire, for example, because it will unlock the potential of those folks. Maybe you can't retire on $1 million, but you're certainly no longer stuck in that horrible job for much longer than you need to be. You have flexibility and options in your life once you have $1 million. I think in after-tax liquidity outside your primary residence, your 401k. In a real estate portfolio, for example, to at least pursue or explore other options.
So financial freedom was your passion before you found BiggerPockets and BiggerPockets. So this is like a dream come true as far as like lining up your personal passion with what is now your day-to-day passion. So that's cool. So I'll just share with the listeners, like everyone has passions. And if you're able to find the career that lines up with that passion, life's a lot more fun and a lot easier.
That's right. A lot of people get confused when I, on the BiggerPockets Money Show podcast, for example, we'll talk to somebody and we'll be like, you should sell your real estate. I don't know what you're doing with this. Like, aren't you supposed to be in love with real estate? No, my passion is financial freedom. And real estate is one tool in the arsenal for financial freedom that's appropriate for some folks and maybe not others. And there's some specific requirements from that. But I think people get surprised by that when it's, am I a fan of real estate? Yeah, I invest in real estate and I'm a fan of it, but it is a drill. The whole is financial freedom.
Scott, you've hit on a few things coming down the pipeline. You mentioned that you have, matching with the lender, matching with the property manager. Can you give us another insight of what else is coming, right? You guys have the vision that you've articulated here on the show. What does BP look like a year from now, 5 years from now? What can our listeners expect to continue to gain from the platform?
Awesome. Yeah. So 5 years from now, you're going to log into BiggerPockets. We're going to collect a little bit of information about you. And we're going to provide you with a ordered list of all of the best content, up to 500, 1,000 hours, however much you want, in the order that we think you should consume it, of what you need to learn to feel comfortable with getting started in flipping in Chicago, or long-term rentals or short-term rentals in Florida, or whatever it is that is relevant to you, help you build that network. So personalized experience there. Our pro membership will have all the tools that you need to make that a reality, including market level analysis in great detail of each of the markets in the country that might be effective for you, and calculators and tools to help you make that will bring you deals pre-populated or pre-analyzed for you, so you can sort them by cash flow potential or their likelihood to achieve the success of the given strategy. We'll provide management tools to help you manage the business, and we'll provide a portfolio tracker that allows you to say, hey, is my existing portfolio performing right now? Should I sell one or two of the poor performers in that portfolio? Should I refinance some of those properties, or should I just continue holding and allow the property to amortize and spit off cash flow at this point in time? And then combining that, and that will all be integrated into a marketplace of professionals and mentors, peers, whatever. So you can go out and meet your agent, your lender, your property manager, your insurance broker, shop these folks, understand how they've performed for other investors in your area, including the other seasoned investors whose opinions you can have high confidence in about the judgment of the professionals in that network. So it'll be this one-stop shop technology experience for real estate investors to start, manage, and scale their portfolio over time.
That's awesome.
And on next year, that will look like we'll have the property management. We just introduced property management, which is brand new for pro members in the last couple of weeks. Off-market deal finding, and then we'll have some more market analysis tools, and we'll begin getting to work on that portfolio tracking application. That will probably involve a partnership with an accounting software, and then a custom-built portfolio dashboard. So we'll probably have the first iterations of that in a dashboard experience for members. And then we'll also have finished largely our agent matchmaking platform, and we'll be beginning our lending matchmaking platform on BiggerPockets by the end of next year. So that's 5 years and 1 year to answer your question.
Awesome. And what about the podcasts? Because I know in the last call of 2 years, you guys, you have the Rookie podcast, the Money podcast. You guys had the business one for a while. Do you think you'll continue to, I don't want to say find new lines, but is that going to expand as well? Or do you think that's pretty much set where it is today?
I think that, so the pod, we're still noodling on what is the future of the media business. So we have some options at BiggerPockets, which are fun. So full transparency, we haven't fully decided that yet. One option is to really embrace the real estate space like we have been and continue to focus our content there. And the other is to broaden the offerings in our media business to be more around the entire journey from financial freedom and wealth management. So think about a show focused on getting a raise in your career, or entrepreneurship, small business. Like we think small business ownership is a really fun opportunity, especially in these services-based industries, like something along the lines of or parallels what Cody Sanchez does, for example. So there's opportunities there. The question is how that fits into the core business strategy of what I just articulated, building the one-stop shop for real estate investors. We also have international opportunities, British pockets, Boceos Grandes, a Spanish language BiggerPockets. Those are all things on the table as well. it's kind of crystallizing that in like, okay, we're not going to just like randomly do a show, a British Pockets podcast. There has to be a strategy that goes along with that to replicate, for example, the offerings we have in the US in something that focuses on the UK. Or if we go into financial freedom, can we offer other tools and services along with those podcasts? So again, I don't have a good answer to your question because we haven't solved for that here yet at BiggerPockets.
It's all exciting stuff, though.
Yeah, it's all
lot
fun.
Of potential, a lot of good options on the table.
Yeah, it's all fun. And you know what's something that's interesting in the podcast space is there are a lot of podcasters out there who have great content and great thought leadership, but do not have enough advertising revenue to sustain their businesses. They're not able to get sponsors, and they don't factor in the costs of producing the show. To produce a good podcast is $500 to $1,000 an episode, and that includes paying the talent, the hosts. That includes booking, the administrative work and booking the guests. That includes audio, video editing, creating social media clips, transcribing the video, making it ready for distribution on both audio and video channels. So a lot of folks do that work themselves instead of paying it. Doesn't mean that the cost is not $500 to $1,000 an episode. It just means that they're doing it. And so we think that there are opportunities to save content programs that are not able to monetize. You get 30,000 listens, but you can't sell any inventory because, or maybe you have 2 sponsors that are buying only a fraction of that inventory. That's not a cash flow positive situation, and something that we think we can help with our network.
All right, we passed 200,000 downloads. So BiggerPockets Chicago. We go right there.
Love it.
Yeah. There we go. Go granular into the neighborhoods here. So I just asked you what's coming up ahead. I do want to look backwards, one last question, and then we'll move on to the book. But going back on your journey here over the last 8 years, playing Monday morning quarterback, can you give us either 1 or 2 things with the help of retrospective now that you'd say, you know what, I would have done that differently?
Yeah, I would have put together the vision. I can answer very clearly where we're going with BiggerPockets, or hopefully that was clear to you guys.
Yep.
And, one-stop shop for real estate investors. I was not able to answer that question very clearly 4 years ago. I was thinking very incrementally. I would have answered your question. Oh, next, I think we're going to go into British Pockets next because there's a big market there, an opportunity. I would have given you very incremental answers, and I built the business very incrementally. So I had a wacky organizational structure with half the organization reporting to me, half the organization reporting to another individual. It didn't make sense. It all made sense. Each incremental move made sense, but then when I looked back at it and zero-based the business, it just was a mess from a structural standpoint, and it wasn't going anywhere. So I would have started with the end in mind much sooner, had clarity, a vision and purpose and strategy, and moved to place the structure immediately. I probably lost 3 years by moving too slowly in those areas because I didn't have clarity of lack of thinking. And with clarity of thinking comes major changes, and those major changes involve short-term pain. So putting together that leadership team and that structure and moving away from what I had previously caused pain. People moved on from the business voluntarily and involuntarily, and with new leaders place and replace certain individuals in their departments. But one day or another, you're going to have to make those changes. The sooner you make them, the less pain involved, I think, and the faster and further along you are towards your vision.
Great answer. And we had our first Stephen Covey principle drop there, which we get about one of those an episode. So we finally got the begin with end in mind there.
Yeah.
So, all right. So, Scott, Mark and I are both very, I would label us both as very practical individuals, right? And we try to portray that to our listeners on the show here. And that's one of the greatest thing I think about your book is it's not the flashy, do this, follow your dreams. It's just so pragmatic. And for reference, it's Set for Life. A great book you can find on BiggerPockets. We will link to it in the show notes. What was the impetus of that? Why write the book? What was the reasoning behind, sitting down and putting that time and effort in?
Yeah. So what I thought and what I told myself at the time, and I think I still believe, I definitely still believe, is that there was why that book was needed is that there was no path there's a lot of books on mindset for financial independence, how to think about money as a tool, buy assets, not liabilities, rich dad, poor dad, those types of things. But there was not here's the step-by-step path to getting over the hump toward financial freedom, of amassing that first year of liquidity, of buying that first property, those types of things. And I thought only someone who has just gone through that from, in that set of circumstances can articulate the passion or the grind that goes along with the set of decisions needed to get ahead in this country, starting with a median income and no assets. And so I wanted to write, I wrote the book because I thought that, hey, over the last 4 years, I had just gone from making $50,000 a year and having $3,000 in the bank to having close to $1 million, maybe a little bit more by the time the book published, in personal wealth across assets that included real estate, after-tax brokerage accounts, stocks, and a significant cash cushion. And that's the beginning point of financial freedom. And I thought there was no step-by-step guide to achieving that result in an actual logical, ordered way that accounts for the grind and sacrifice of saving, of the hustle, the all-out hustle that goes to increasing the odds of earning more income as much as possible, to making investments that are multiple times, like a house hack was 4 times, 5 times my annual income in debt that I assumed for that first property. That is terrifying. You have to really believe your analysis and feel very, really confident in it in order to make a bet that's that large at that point in your life. And then, of course, you need a system to become wealthy over time, a system that has both a formula from saving, investing, an Excel spreadsheet that tells you you're going to become financially free at this point in time if you follow it. But you also have to juxtapose that system with opportunistic bets that you're taking in parallel to that. Because why not? Entrepreneurship and side hustles and those types of businesses can produce major outcomes. I think too many people focus on one of those two avenues, the formula to the exclusion of opportunity, and opportunity to the exclusion of a formula too much. So I wanted to write a book that provided that template. I recently revised it this year, and I changed the title to Set for Life: An All-Out Approach to Financial Freedom at an Early Age, which is what I wanted to try to produce.
No, it's a fantastic book. Again, we'll link to it in the show notes here. I know most of our listeners have probably already downloaded and listened to it, but for those who haven't, it's a great read. Whether you are just starting out or you're already on the path, again, I can't think of a better word. I'm sorry, I'm selling you short, but just practical, right? Like you talk about, this is how things get done. This is how you do it. And because of that, it's so valuable to the listener, or to the reader, I should say.
That's what I was going for, is practical. The best review I ever got on the book was useful info dictated by a non-annoying voice. So
all right, got it.
That's what I was going for. All right. Yeah. Well, thank you. I appreciate you mentioning the book. I like I said, I did recently revise it. So there's a revised edition, updated for inflation, all that kind of good stuff.
Yeah. All right. So right now we're recording this at the end of November 2022. On top of everyone's mind, we have inflation. People are talking about employment, recession, all those fun buzzwords. You've written a couple different articles and you've been interviewed a couple different times. It sounds like you continue to invest, even though you feel like we may be in a bubble. I believe you have a checklist out there talking about what to look for in the market. Before even diving into that, though, can you give us your high level outlook on inflation and employment? Because I heard it and it was very interesting to me. Yeah.
So in the next 12 months, so 2023, a good portion of the year, I think, first of all, I think that inflation is likely peaking right now. So inflation was very high last year, and that new baseline is now in play. So in order for us to get another year of 8 to 10% inflation, prices have to go up another 8 to 10%, right? That's by definition, of course.
Correct. It's the 20. We're going off the 2021 baseline in 2022, and then so forth every year moving forward.
Yes,
the goalpost moves every time.
That will by in itself be a big impediment. There's furthermore, there's a number of research. There's some research out there that indicates that as much as 40% of current inflation is due to supply chain issues, which are slowly but surely starting to clear up. Right. I believe that inflation will fall next year. So we'll go from 8 to 10% that we've been seeing to 4 to 5%, maybe lower. There are shocks and volatility that come into that are not within the Federal Reserve's control and also not within the federal government's control completely. So who knows how things will go, whether it'll get down to 2% and we can stop seeing these rate hikes, or whether it won't. But I think you'll see rates continue to stay high from the Fed, and they'll be more cautious in the next year. So what does that mean for investors, I think, is the next question. Well, interest rates have gone up dramatically over the past year. 30-year mortgages can be as high as 7% rates right now. I think you're going to see that level off. And there's even a reality where they come down to some degree, not down to 3 to 4%, but 5.5% is something you could see in 2023 from a rates perspective. Higher rates are going to impact prices. So I do not think prices are going to go up next year for residential real estate. And I think that it's a fair bet that they're going to go down. On the Market podcast from BiggerPockets had a pretty good take on this a few weeks ago. And the consensus was the panelists thought that the prices would fall between 6 and 10% nationally, and that there would be some markets that are hit significantly harder. So the regional impacts could dramatically vary from that 6 to 10% fall. So we're openly at BiggerPockets, or at least some of our podcast hosts are openly predicting prices to fall to a pretty significant degree in the next year. And I think I would largely agree with that assessment. Rents are another question here. What's going to happen to rents? I think rents are a coin flip, whether they're going to rise or fall next year. I'm predicting very close to zero rent growth personally. And I think that's there's a coin flip. And I think that the reason for that is, logically you'd think, okay, interest rates are rising. Therefore, my alternative to renting just got way more expensive. Shouldn't that be upward pressure on rents? And I think that, yes, that is the one thing that is going to provide upward pressure on rents. But like I mentioned, inflation is going to slow over the next year. Rents grew 27% over the past 2 years nationwide. That is an unsustainable amount of growth. And a lot of people are reacting to that by moving back in with mom and dad. I think over half of Gen Z is living in with mom and dad right now, for example, waiting for prices to fall so they can buy. You also had an interesting phenomena in COVID where people were stuck living together and they broke up. When you break up, you create 2 units of housing demand, right? Well, both of those people now have to rent a place in a separate location. That's starting to correct as well. And that's actually an underrated phenomena that's going on here. Okay, next, and you asked this question, so you're going to get a long response. So here you're
going.
Next, we have supply and demand. So I just told you that demand is starting to dry up on the rental side. And then interest rates are obviously crushing demand on the home buying front. In the absence of, without interest rates changing, there's still more demand than supply. But supply is starting to pick up. There's a lot of new construction units that have come on the market, or that will come on the market in the next 12 to 18 months. One of the best experts on this in the entire industry is Ivy Zellman. And in particular, in multifamily, we're expecting 1.6 million incremental units in the next 12 to 18 months to come online. All you got to do is look out the window here in Denver. I don't know what you do in Chicago, and you see the cranes. And I've seen cranes here for the last 8 years. I've never seen as many as are currently going right now, mostly constructing commercial multifamily. So those units will finish. You don't pause your construction project midway through. They're not starting new projects nearly as much as they were a year ago today, but they're going to finish the units that have come online. So I think where you should be terrified as a real estate investor right now is in the commercial multifamily space. Every market's going to be different, but nationwide, you've got serious headwinds in that business. One, you've got 1.6 million units coming online. Two, you've got a forecast, if you believe me, of no rent growth and a coin flip. So you can't underwrite your growth projections on rent increases unless you're adding value. And third, and terrifying, is cap rates on a nationwide basis are right now lower than interest rates. Let me rephrase that. If you buy a multifamily apartment complex at a 5 cap, you're spending $1 million, for example, and making 50 grand in income. If you get a mortgage or a commercial debt for that property, you're going to get 5.5% interest. That's $55,000 in interest payments. So buying a multifamily apartment complex right now in the United States, on average, without a value add, is better done with all cash than with leverage. That is going to change. One way or another, that's going to change. Either rent is going to jump dramatically and bail out these apartment syndicators, because then their cap rate will increase, or then at that same cap rate, there will be more
the value will increase, right, with the higher NOI.
Or interest rates are going to fall, or cap rates are going to increase. And that last one is what I would be betting on right now. Cap rates are going to increase, and they're going to increase significantly. The average spread between nationwide cap rates and interest rates on commercial debt is about 150 basis points. Right now it's negative. So that implies that if the average cap rate is 5%, you're going to see cap rates increase to 6.5%. That will wipe out half, 3/4 of the equity of a lot of syndicators who are putting together deals right now, if that were to happen. So that's a real risk. I think in the small residential space, the stuff where BiggerPockets investors play in, I think that's going to be impacted less significantly than commercial space, because there's no sell pressure, right? The vast majority of investors can just hold on to their rental property for 30 years, and they're going to be reasonably cash flow positive or locked into their 30-year interest rate mortgages. So the downward pressure is going to come from people who are forced to sell, which will start to pick up to some degree, and then from new construction, new builders. In the commercial space, you got to sell or refinance every 5 years. That almost all of that inventory is financed with 5-year weighted average life debt. So they will have to refinance or sell within 5 years, and that will put pressure on within the next 12 months, would be my guess. So.
All right. So Scott, great answer. We can spend hours talking about this. I just got a few follow-ups though. So one, let's go back to the cap rate discussion real quick, because two things here. I love when people in the multifamily space will say like, well, what I love about it is I control the value of the buildings. I increase NOI. And my response to that is always like, true. However, you don't control the cap rate, which is the denominator, and the bigger, a half bit point move on that is a much bigger hit on you than if you raise, got 10% more in the NOI, right? Like, it's an uncontrollable factor that if you have some 3 or 5 year plan, like if you're doing a true syndication, like that exit cap can murder you, even if you executed your game plan correctly, right? And then parlay that with, if the building drops by, let's say 10%, that could theoretically knock out 1/3 of your equity. Like, yes. Let's say take $1 million building. It has $300K in equity in it. Like, you have a $700,000 loan, right? Like, so there's $300K there. That 10% drop, your investment didn't drop by 10%. Like, the equity in there is all of a sudden 1/3 of it is wiped out, and you can get caught in that timing. And it's a very dangerous place to play doing these things where you have to exit.
Yeah. And the person who gets creamed isn't even the syndicator.
Guys, no, it's the LP. If you got either re-ante or you're done.
Yeah, the syndicator makes money by raising capital and getting promote on that capital, right? So classic syndicator move would be, if I'm in Chicago, I'm going to buy a $30 million complex. I'm going to get a 1 or 2% fee for buying that complex because I'm the syndicator, and I'm going to charge a brokerage fee. It's $300 grand or $600 grand in my pocket. Then I'm going to charge 2%. So I raised $10 million of equity, for example, financed with $20 million in debt. I'm going to charge 2% or 200 grand a year to manage the 10 million on top of the cost to actually run the property. All right. And then, to your point, that property loses 10% of its value and goes from 30 to 27 million. You've just wiped out 1/3, to your point, of the equity. And if you believe what I just said, the implication is not that these properties are going to go down by 10%, it's that they're going to go down by closer to 20% in valuation in that situation. Because if you believe me that the spread between cap rate and interest rate needs to be about 150 basis points, that implies going from 5 to 6.5. That's a 20% reduction in price. That wipes out more than half of your equity in a 70-30 debt to equity deal. So
Yeah,
I think that's terrifying. This is a game of chicken, in my opinion, that I'm not willing to play right now. I have invested in syndications in the past. I will again in the future, but the next 12 months I think this is one of the highest risk asset classes available right now, personally.
Yep. And then let's go to the smaller space real quick, because you mentioned you think pricing might drop there. I can't remember what you said, 7 to 10%. But I guess my one question there is, if rates go from, let's say they're at 7 today, and let's say we do get that bump down to 5.5, 12 months from now, optimistic, rosy path forward. Do you still see pricing though being lower, right? Like, you're trying to sell something now when rates are at 7. I just, like, in theory, I would think that you would get the same number or a better number with the more attractive rates.
Well, if rates go lower, then that would put upward pressure on prices, right? Because the payment matters more than the price for most home buyers and landlords, right? That impacts your cash flow to a certain degree. So as long as you believe the property is going to be worth more than 30 years, you're going to be willing to pay more logically at a lower interest rate than a higher one. So I think that puts upward pressure. And I think that's why, there's a band there, 6 to 10%. So I think that in the event that they fall from 7 currently to 5.5, 6 next year, I would put that put the price drop closer to the 6 range. But it's still 5.5. Last year, rates were like 2 3/4. So it's still double, or almost double, maybe more than double, in terms of a percentage rate increase over what it was a year ago, at 5.5%. So that there's just some things that are out of whack here. A lot of this is anybody's guess, but I think that I'm pretty comfortable with the idea that prices are likely to decline over the next 12 months to some degree, unless something crazy happens to a large degree. We'll see. You got to make some kind of assumption around these things from your portfolio perspective. So can I ask one more question to myself?
Yeah, do it.
So the question that begets is, what should you do as an investor in this environment, right? So if that's what you think is going to happen, what do you do? Well, the first thing I think is consider buying, if you can, all in cash, right? If the cap rate is lower than the interest rate, don't use leverage. Better return, lower risk, right? Unless you think there's going to be a lot of appreciation in the next 12 months. Second, get on the lending side. If the cap rate is lower than the interest rate, earn interest. That's a really good way to shift your money to a large degree. The third one is, I think, getting really creative with assignable mortgages. If you can go in and assume someone's 2.5%, 3% mortgage, you can pay more for that property than your competition. And that may be a really good option for a lot of folks, because they'll get more cash at closing as long as they're willing to potentially take some risks with the assignment of the mortgage or go through the paperwork of assigning those mortgages. So those would be 3 things that I'd be looking at over the next 12 months for investors getting into the space. And I will probably do personally some combination of those 3 things. I still believe in real estate as a long-term asset class. I just think that the leverage ratio, leverage is diluting returns, because that cap rate issue is also true in the single family rental space. Not a lot of properties are producing 7% cap rates when you analyze them with, for example, a BP calculator. So that means don't use 7% interest rate debt to finance those properties. Either finance them with cash if you can, or find a creative way to increase that.
It's tough. Mark, we ready to wrap here?
Yeah. That was a good answer to go out on. So, all right, Scott, we got a handful of questions for you here. It's our version of the rapid round. And here we go. What is your competitive advantage? How have you been able to do all this at such a young age while so many others wish they could?
I think coachability. I listen to, when I find a great mentor, I try to listen to them and take what they say to heart. And then I think a system for setting and staying on track with goals. Every week I do a Sunday review, track my goals. I have an annual goal. I have quarterly goals. I got monthly goals. I got weekly goals. I got my daily checklist. I do it every day, get 1% ahead each day.
Scott, you've already dropped a ton of advice, but what is the one piece of advice you would tell someone that is looking to buy their first investment property?
I think it's spend the 500 hours immersing yourself in the world of real estate investing across a bunch of different sources. We got some on BiggerPockets. Podcasts like this one are fantastic, but immerse yourself, get comfortable with the ins and outs of real estate investing, so you can make a really good bet.
All right, Scott, what do you do for fun?
What do I do for fun? We just welcomed a baby 5 weeks ago. So that is our firstborn child.
Congrats.
So I do nothing for fun. Aside from that, I like to travel. I like to play video games. I've played rugby for 20 years. I have finally given up on rugby now that I'm, ripe old age at 32 and have large numbers of broken bones. I ski, and I love to visit various beaches and do water activities like scuba.
All right, and you can't say anything in the BP family in this answer here, but a good book, podcast, or self-development activity that you would recommend to our listeners?
Yeah, so I've been listening to Huberman Lab recently, which is a great podcast about general well-being, understanding the mechanisms of your body. I think that's been fantastic. From a book standpoint, one of my favorite books is The Outsiders, not the one you're thinking of. The Outsiders, 8 unconventional CEOs and their radically rational blueprint for success. So if you want to get into my mind and how I try to think about business, that book is really, really influential. And what was the last question?
Or self-development activity.
Self-development activity. I think it's the goal setting thing. So every Sunday night, my wife and I sit down for an hour and we review our goals, we review our relationship, we review our budget, and we review our biggest plans for the next week. And that helps us do that in alignment. And I never am off track for more than about a week on any important goals.
Yeah, Outsiders is a great book, especially when it comes to what companies do with their cash and how they continue to get compounding interest. It was a good book.
Capital allocation.
Yep, capital allocation. Said like a true CEO. I love it. All right. Besides yourself, name one person in your local network you'd highly recommend to other investors as a quality resource.
Quality. I would recommend any of the BiggerPockets podcast hosts and any of the blog authors as well on the platform. So I think that there's a great knowledge from all of them. I think in particular, to highlight one, to answer your question, I'd highlight Dave Meyer, who I think has done a really outstanding job of just really obsessing over the market and the drivers and trying to make sense of what's going on in the economy and the housing market in 2022.
Awesome. And I'm a blog author too. I wasn't even searching for you to say me. So it's all good.
Yeah. Mark, perfect. Yeah.
Scott, thank you so much. You provide a ton of value to our listeners. We will link to all this in the show notes, but is there any other way they can learn more about you and that they can provide value to you?
Yeah, you can find me on BiggerPockets. I have an account there. You can private message me or tag me in the forums if you have anything you want to discuss. And I guess I'm also on Instagram at @Scott_Trench.
Easy to find. All right. So Scott, we usually end with the Chicago fact. We try to make this one though a little different so you have a chance of answering it as well here. So behind the scenes, a little to your knowledge or Mark's knowledge, I emailed Alexis and I asked her, hey, can you get in touch with the business intelligence team at BiggerPockets? Let me know how many users we have in Chicago. So how many BiggerPockets users in Chicago? And this is in the city proper. So it does not include the suburbs. Oh. It does not include if they didn't put Chicago in their location as well.
You guys are
so it's going to be probably a little understated, but you're out multiple choice. Is it 3,000, 7,000, 12,000, or 16,000?
I'm going to go with 7,000.
Mark, you want to go with an answer here?
Yeah, I would have said 7,000 too.
Oh, you guys are underselling us. 12,000.
Wow, 12,000.
12,000 within city limits. 12,423 was the number I was given.
Ah, man. Wow. You know, we didn't even announce it. So Scott, what we do every week is do a Chicago fact, and somebody that goes on our website and buys a merch, shirt, sweatshirt, whatever, they get a $50 gift card brought to you by Renovo if they win. So we lost it for him, Scott. We messed up.
Oh. Sorry, this whole episode's now a downer. All that great content doesn't matter.
12,000. So there's 12,000 people. All right.
Within so that means city limits, man. So there's probably like a good, 18,000, like counting the burbs. No.
Yeah. So we got 3 million people here in Chicago. So Scott, we will help you grow the viewership here in Chicago even more so than we do already. All right.
Love it. Sounds good.
Chicago is pretty wonderful. By the way, 2 years ago, I would have said Chicago would be one of the worst places to invest in the country. Now I think it's near the top of the list. At this point, I think that it didn't see quite as much appreciation as some of the other towns, and there's a lot going for it right now. It's also a beautiful city. I went there a couple of years ago for a rugby game of all things at Soldier Field. So.
Oh, that was like 2-3 years ago. I remember that.
Yeah.
It was a
all right,
big
cool.
deal.
We got our trailer for the podcast right there. That was perfect.
Just steal the headline. Scott Trench says Chicago #1 city.
Yeah.
I think you know, Dave Myers, the expert on that stuff, but I think he would put it up there too.
All right. We'll have
to just an anecdote, like you're sitting there talking about the cranes in the air. Like we don't have that. Like, you know what I'm saying? We didn't have that run up that everyone has had. And we're a Midwest city. It's slow and steady. And the other thing too, just to, the reason Mark and I started this was because people are killing it here making money, as they are in every city. Right. But just because you hear a national headline doesn't mean you can't make money in the city in these different pockets. And, that's the point we try to get across every single week.
Yep.
All right. Awesome. Well, Scott, thanks for coming on. Tom, thank you. As always, listeners, please leave us a 5-star review on Scott's performance today. And we talked to Scott and he said, if you do not leave a review, he will either cancel your free membership or double your pro membership. So please leave us a 5-star review. Also we
know who you are. We know who all 12,000 of you are.
We got the data. So everyone else also go to straightupchicagoinvestor.com and get by the time this airs, it'll be December. You got to get ready for your real estate investor meetup. It's calendar for January and February for Q1 of the 2023. Got to come out hard. So make sure you get out there, start networking with investors. You can see the list of all the different meetups we have. And if you think anything's missing, please let us know and we'll add it on there. We try to be the one-stop shop for Chicago meetups. So Scott, thank you again. Tom, thank you as always. And listeners, we'll see you next week.
Thanks all.